What I know is what my grandfather's sister has taught a lot of, and that's Carrie Philpott, and it's Carrie Warner. But on that side of the family, I know we quickly go right into her mother. I know Lydia Shell Crittenden, all right, which would have been my great-great-grandmother. And then I know Reen Crittenden, which was my grandmother, or great-grandmother.
I have her listed as Marine.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Marine.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's kind of it as far back as I can go to. I get back to Lydia Shell, and now I have seen, because I do know this, that Uncle Mitch is how I knew him, but through my grandfather's tales, but that was Mitch Crittenden and Reen Crittenden were brother and sister. Okay, they both married a Warner, brother and sister. Mitch Crittenden is the grandfather of S. Joe Crittenden. So S. Joe and I, former deputy principal chief, we're double cousins.
Okay.
That the way that it's told to us.
Okay.
Yes,
so you
sir.
have a close relationship with him.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, let's turn to the
Okay,
first page
okay.
here. Your paternal grandparents were Carl Jr. Warner and Velta Geneva Hunter.
Yes.
And they were each of Cherokee descent.
Yes.
Okay, both of them were reared in Stillwell, and that's where your father, Bobby Lynn Warner, was born.
Yes.
Carl had been in the Army during the Korean War, and I believe he rose to the rank of Master Sergeant.
Yes, sir. Yes, he did. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, he was the son of John Warner and Marine Crittenden Warner, and both of them were also born in what's now Adair County before statehood.
Okay.
You have 12 Cherokee ancestors enrolled by the Dawes Commission and one ancestor enrolled as an intermarried citizen. Okay, that last person is your third great-grandfather in your grandmother's ancestry, Calvin Guthrie.
Okay.
He was a white man born in Pennsylvania in 1829. Now, traditional Cherokee elements were able, through the courts, to have the Dawes Commission reject enrollment for most intermarried citizens. However, Calvin was one of over 200 whites who had been married to Cherokee citizens prior to 1874 when intermarriage laws were revised, and they were deemed eligible for enrollment.
Okay.
And this is his enrollment
Interesting.
card.
Interesting.
Now, his daughter Sarah and granddaughter Addie, you mentioned Addie a while ago, were enrolled on this card number 786. Sarah's husband, James Kelly, was originally assigned a roll number but was later stricken from the roll due to this intermarried citizen distinction. So he originally had a roll number, but they scratched it
I'll
off.
be dang.
And your great-grandfather, John Warner, was enrolled as a minor citizen.
Okay, I didn't know
He was
that.
born
Yeah.
in 1904. Now, his mother, Martha Sheffield Warner, had previously been enrolled through the 1902 cutoff date. Now, Martha's grandfather was named John Tidwell. Have you heard that name before?
I have. Yeah.
Okay. And he was one of the oldest citizens enrolled by Dawes at age 85. And here is a page from his testimony given to the Dawes Commission in July 1900 and his accompanying census card. Now, John did not come west during the forced removal, but he remained in Georgia probably because his mother was white. Now, John came to the Cherokee Nation in 1889. That's kind of late. And after having made application for readmittance the previous year, this allowed him to be enrolled by Dawes on this card. Now, your grandmother, Marine Crittenden Warner, was born shortly after the March 1906 enrollment cutoff, but her parents and earlier ancestors were enrolled. She was the daughter of Isaac and Lydia Shell Crittenden. This is their Dawes enrollment. Besides enrollment, the Dawes Commission was tasked with allotting the land to the individual citizens. And of course, the land could not be randomly given out because each family had to have its own homestead, and improvements that they lived on had to be allotted to them. That was a monumental task before computers, if you can possibly imagine. Now, especially for children, much of their allotment lands would have to have been in locations other than near where their parents lived. Here is some testimony that was given by your great-grandmother Martha Sheffield Warner regarding her family's allotment. Now, 4 of your Cherokee ancestors were found to have served in the war, 3 for the Union and 1 for the Confederacy. Now, Joe Crittenden enlisted in the Union Army's Indian Home Guards in September of 1862. In 1883, he received a pension due to being invalid, and he died in 1888. Now, these pensions were originally $8 per month, but they were increased in 1912. And likely his widow, Peggy, continued to receive a pension until her death in 1924. John Shell enlisted in July 1862 and was eventually promoted to captain. He died in 1877, and in 1891, his widow, Charlotte, filed for and received a widow's pension, likely until her death in 1906. Now, Mansell Tidwell, the son of John, never came west to the Cherokee Nation. He enlisted in the Confederate cavalry in 1862 in Georgia and was discharged in 1865.
But this is the only one that went
he
Confederate,
was the
right?
only Confederate.
Okay.
Now, of course, Confederate veterans were not eligible for federal pensions, but many southern states, including Oklahoma, awarded state pensions to former Confederate soldiers. Mansell received a pension in Alabama, and he died there in 1917. Notice his pension indicates that he was wounded at Murfreesboro.
Sure enough.
Right here.
Yep. I'll be dang.
Now we want to discuss your known ancestors in the East pre-removal.
Okay.
And the Cherokee families that began to move away from the eastern homeland in the 1790s and were settling west of the Mississippi, generally in northeast Arkansas, and eventually congregating near Russellville. Now, your ancestors, James and Susie Love Walkingstick, and their family immigrated in 1834 during this last segment of Old Settler Movement. They had been residents of Ellijay in Georgia, and here is the payment that they received for their improvements that they abandoned when they moved. They settled in what's now Adair County, and this is your only family with an Old Settler designation.
Okay.
Now, the remainder of your Cherokee ancestors all appear to have been living in the East in 1835. That year, the United States conducted a census of the population, property, and farm products in the Cherokee Nation. Here's an enumeration of one of your ancestors, Edward Adair, who lived on Uscalooga Creek in Cass County, Georgia. Now, here's another enumeration from that census for your ancestor, Dick or Richard Crittenden. He lived on Town Creek in Gilmer County, Georgia. Okay. Now, on December the 29th of that year, 1835, a minority political faction of the Cherokee Nation, usually now referred to as the Treaty Party or the Ridge Party, signed a removal treaty in New Echota, and it was used as the legal justification for the forced removal 2 years later. One of your ancestors, Dick Easkey, was a signer. In May 1838, when the Army under General Winfield Scott began rounding up individuals for transport to the West, Chief Ross and other leading headmen received permission from General Scott to conduct their own removal, and under the Chief's direction, 13 detachments of approximately 1,000 persons each moved overland to the Indian Territory beginning in the fall of 1838. Your ancestors, Dick Easkey and Richard Crittenden, both came on what's called the Moses Daniel Detachment. He was the detachment leader. Dick Crittenden was considered a regulator on that detachment and was paid for those services. And we believe that's a position similar to a marshal or a policeman.
Okay.
Now, there was a 14th detachment that came during this time, but was not under Chief Ross's command, and it's usually called the Bell Detachment, and it was made up mainly of persons who had supported the treaty and a few stragglers. They were kind of segregated because the Treaty Party was very unpopular. Mm-hmm. And your ancestors, Agnes Sanders Alberty, and her very aged mother, Susanna Sanders, came on this detachment. Okay. They settled over near Proctor. Now, this last document, if you can open it up here, it opens up, is a listing of all of your traceable Cherokee ancestors.
Okay. Excellent. I tell you what, that is something else, and I sure appreciate you taking the time, Mr. Hampton, to bring me up to date. You know, well, whatever you do it very well, and There's some names in there that I've heard. There was quite a bit that I haven't heard. I've always wondered about Civil War time. My cousin and I both have an affinity. He's a history teacher, by the way, and he's always big on the Civil War, and I was always wondering what side some of the ancestry might have fallen on. Sounds like 3 to 1. It sounds like, yes, sir. You know, I think it's always important. I hope other folks take the time. My Aunt Carrie, I mean, she is really big into genealogy, and she's kind of the one that brings everybody together during the holidays and starts telling everybody about some of the things that they like, some of the old stories and different things. So this really pieced it all together, sir, and I can't tell you.
Okay, well,
thank you enough. No, thank you, sir.
Thank you.